This is episode 14 of the Google News Update. This is your host, Mike Baker. And as usual, got my co-host here, Mike Bennett. What's going on, bro?
What's good, everybody? What's good? Mike Bennett in the building.
I don't know why I thought you was going to be like, hooty hoo, or some shit. Be like, what? Air.
Nah. I ain't over there no more. So
yeah, man.
they don't even know I used to live that life, man.
Yeah, man. That's just another era. What's going on, everybody? As usual, we got the Google News Update, man. We got pros and con articles about your favorite company, Google, and it's kind of my favorite company too. I can't lie. I do a lot of work with Google, and I definitely pay Google some money for some of their services. So, I mean, I like Google too. But today we're going to talk about a couple of topics that are going to be, per usual, questionable topics about what Google does and with their business models. First topic that we have is two children sue Google for allegedly collecting student biometric data. That's pretty much an interesting topic, especially for now with everybody working or going to school from home, doing remote learning and working. But yeah, we're going to talk about that one. The next topic that we're going to go through is Google shares data on how virus has changed movement in cities. With this whole coronavirus thing happening, everybody is pushed to stay at home or work from home. They're pushing the campaign, stay in place. So with that happening and everybody having tracking devices on them for the most part, Google is able to see the change of how we move, similar to how viruses move. And then the last topic that we have is that Google and the USCF, there's some university, I got to check and see what that is. But Google and the USCF collaborate on machine learning tool to prevent harmful prescription errors. This is an interesting topic for them to be in. There's a weird industry for them to be in, pharmaceuticals and whatnot. But we're going to talk about that and a little bit more as well. But for the first topic that we have, two children sue Google for allegedly collecting students' biometric data. Basically, this is a subhead. This is from CNN, CNET.com. But the subhead reads that the lawsuit says that the search giant violated privacy laws with its educational tools. The issue here is that for a lot of schools, elementary, middle schools, colleges, high schools, if they are using Google G Suite, their productivity suite, when it comes to sending emails, storing documents in the cloud, a lot of academics are using G Suite for education. It's Google for education. Essentially is a set of tools that, they also give you for business and for commercial use that are geared toward educational purposes. And particular, one of the tools that they have is Classroom, which essentially is a virtual classroom platform. You can create curriculum online and allow for your students to be able to access the information on there, all the resources, all the documentation, and collaborate and communicate within that system. But one of the things that they are being sued for, in particular, these two children from San Jose, California, are they don't actually say the names because, they're children, so they keep the names under wrap, but they say HK and JC. They're suing them for collecting biometric data on these two students. For one, I don't think it's the two students that's doing the suing. More than likely, it's the parents doing the suing, and they probably doing the suing because they know they can get some money off of Google, even if they lose the case. Court the case or whatever. Google will probably settle for like $1 million or something, which is $1 million more than they had before. But for the most part, they're suing them because they are saying that Google is collecting face data and biometric data. So that basically includes a facial scan for facial recognition purposes and fingerprint scan. Say it again.
Yeah, I said fingerprint scan. I said fingernails.
And the fingerprint scan. And also they saying that here voice prints. So with a lot of these things you can use Google Assistant for. So one of the features of Google Assistant is that you can set it to recognize your distinct voice from somebody else's, and that it essentially requires creating a voice print or creating a voice model for what your voice sounds like in comparison to other people. And what they're saying is that the fact that this is being used for Google for Education means that they are potentially violating privacy acts when it comes to children. The COPA Act, in particular, the Children Online Privacy Protection Act. And it's saying that they're basically in violation of this for the most part when it comes to any child that's being online. If they have a user account on one of your services, they have to go, if they're under the age of 13, they have to go through parental consent before any of this stuff is allowed to be used. And they're essentially saying that since this is going through your school, that the parents aren't the ones that are signing this stuff off. So the school is, the educators are, and the students are essentially just being forced to use Google G Suite, and they don't really get a say, and they don't have to ask the parents whether they're allowed to collect your facial scan, your biometric print, and your voice print. What do you think about this, Mike?
I think this is just well, I don't want to say expected, but again, you just see corporations that feel like there are no boundaries based off of the mass that they have or the notoriety or whatever the case is. And I think that it's always, so when you hear something like this, I think it's just maybe Google not really being on their P's and Q's about how to properly protect themselves. I mean, you can't get everything. Like you said, some people may just come up with something. We've seen it numerous times. I heard there's different, may just represent rap stories where, some dude to say that he got to take a paternity test just because the girl said that he's pregnant, right? Like, so right, I mean, I think it's like
you got to prove your innocence,
right? You got to, and I think that's where, and it's like if you lose, it's like no matter, it's like losing regardless because, it's with Google in this situation. If they try to fight against it, I feel like it will be a bad look. So they was better off just forfeiting whatever it is they were looking for, whatever the two kids looking for. By the way, I want to say it's weird in the article. It says that they're disguising the kids' names, but then turn around and say it's the kid's father. So I'm like, if they say who the kid's father is, I know who.
Right, exactly.
But anyway, that's besides the point. As far as it going this far, it's just as far as what people would do when you are a billion dollar company. I'll be honest, I would do the same thing if I was at that, like if the opportunity presented itself and I was in dire need. I know it may sound immoral, but I mean, what it's not like anything that Google. The reason why Google will shovel out the money is because they're at a level where their expectation sometimes precedes the money that they have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's now as far as Google collecting all this information, that's not anything new. We know that this is what Google does. The experts said it, and that's why they're at the top. Even if it comes down to malicious things, how true is it that they are collecting face scan and stuff?
Your facial scan.
Yeah. I mean.
And storing it because they keep that in the cloud somewhere.
Well, it just goes, I guess, and this may be hypothetical, but or a conspiracy, but I am one to believe that once something is on the internet, it's never deleted, regardless. So, I mean, you can make that claim. Maybe I'm sounding like Google's lawyer here, but it wouldn't be the first time. I think they just more so found this story had caught on. Therefore, it's going with it. I don't think it's the first time something like this has happened to Google.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to handle it, but all in all, I would want both parties to, find some type of middle ground. but I do feel, to address your other point, man, I do feel like parents may be putting them up to this because the kids, like, what do kids really know about? You hear that stuff all the time.
Following the suit. Yeah.
Yeah, following the suit. They don't know.
Yeah.
Come on, man. It's not. They don't really know about that stuff. They probably just hear about it here and there. But for it to go this far, I think it's definitely the parents behind this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, more than likely, it probably really is just the parent, and then the people that wrote this article said the two kids are doing it just so that they can, clickbait type thing.
Yeah, clickbait.
Yeah, man. But yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that seem like it's hard to say. I feel like it's Google's issue that they have to address, but at the same time, it's kind of the school district's issue as well, because it is that fine line where you do have to get the parents' consent, and Google is making, like, Google created the G Suite for education explicitly for education purposes, so that they can strip out some of the things that are different from a business, where you don't have to give those rights away. Um, when you're dealing in education, you're immediately thinking about dealing with children.
Kids.
And they made it for the idea of dealing with children. So I'm sure there's a lot of protections in place, but nonetheless, when it comes to Google, they're not making an agreement directly with the kids. They're making an agreement with the school, and then the school sort of has to trickle down, and
school has to relay the message.
Yeah, they have to inform the parents that they're going to be using the software, and give the parents get the parents' official okay to say that they can use the software. And that's probably an argument that they may put in place. Is like, we're just Google, and we just have the software, and we make the agreement with the schools, but the schools have to actually communicate this to the people that are going to be using it, that these are the rules and regulations. Like, we have them all listed out, and you can find our privacy policy easily because we're Google. You can Google our privacy policy, but like, you still have to be able to relay that message to the parents that are going to be using the software. And more than likely, that may be their argument to use. And I mean, Clinton might have to go and sue the school instead. Like,
Clinton.
Like, you had to sue the whole school system for whatever district they're in California, to be like, if y'all going to have us using this on a regional level for all of the school system, then all the students, all the parents have to take this into effect. They have to take this into account. Google's usually one of the best companies when it comes to like privacy information. Like, it's one of those catch-22s, because Google knows everything, but they also are one of the best when it comes to privatizing information. When I say that, I mean they tend to do one of the best jobs when it comes to encrypting information, so that the only thing that has access to that information is the application that's being used at that time. So even though they do get your what they say, a face template, even though they get like a facial scan of what your face looks like, even though they get that voice print, and even though they get the fingerprint, that's encrypted, and it's encrypted and stored in a database. And usually the only system that can pull it out is the application under your username. And they make all these gateways and checkpoints. They usually build them into their software so that it does keep everything encrypted until both the application and that user that's using the application request that data. And at that point, it gets decrypted. But it's one of those things where you still got to audit it. They have third-party companies that audit and test their software to make sure it's doing what they say that it's doing. But when it comes to not relaying that message, they still gonna get themselves caught up in these situations, because this is about the parent of these children being concerned about their privacy, and not being informed and not being told by Google or by the people that's working with Google that their data is being collected in these ways. So, I mean, it's one of those things that they're going to have to
sift through.
Yeah, they're going to have to go through it all, and come up with new processes for how they give out G Suite for education to people, and actually make sure that it's abiding by these rules on a digital level and, a person-to-person level.
Right.
But yeah, the next topic that we have is that Google shares data on how viruses has changed the movement in cities. Um, I keep reading that stuff wrong. Sometimes I just break it down. But yeah,
So
Google shares data on how viruses have changed movement in cities. Yeah. um, this topic is coming from Bloomberg. Basically, they are using all the data that Google has. They have access to basically every database that's available. All these different companies, all like every company now has some type of database in some form, and Google makes
has
partnerships.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, like everybody got a data. If you got a spreadsheet that has a list of names and phone numbers and emails, that's your database. But like that goes to levels beyond, and Google works in a way where a lot of the companies that they partner up with, part of their partnering is having access to their databases, and this move here is saying that Google is essentially tracking people movement based on their GPS usage, based on the usage that their phone usage. They're tracking the movement of how people are getting around the city, or for this coronavirus, how they're not getting around the city and how they're staying put. And they're comparing the data of now with the data of like last month and the prior era, where
Mhm.
um, people aren't traveling as much, they aren't making as many moves across the interstate, they're not doing commute for driving, they're not really going out for adventures and traveling and vacation and whatnot. They're basically staying put, and Google was able to see that data mostly because of Google Maps, because Google Maps has a billion users, just like how Facebook has a billion users. A lot of people use Google Maps on a daily basis. um, Google also has partnerships with all the major telecommunication vendors, so Verizon, AT&T, um, Comcast, T-Mobile, Sprint. They have partnerships with all of them, so they can see exactly whatever those telecom companies see. So if you're driving with your phone and your phone is going from antenna A to antenna B to antenna C, um, they can see that same data because AT&T can see that data, because Verizon can see that data. So their partnership is allowing them access to that same type of data. So they're able to see this type of movement, and part of it is just being able to see how the spread is happening, because that's part of it. They want to see if they can try to potentially correlate some data between the movement of people and then the movement of this virus, and then the reverse effect of, if people aren't moving as much, how is the virus actually going down, how is the spread going down over time. um, but this people are definitely worried about this stuff, man. How do you feel about it, Bree?
I've already seen like the ramifications of like what's happening right now, and I think that there are some good things that can come with this when you think about the concern of the people, right? Like here in Atlanta, because they shut down a lot of the shelters and stuff, you see a whole lot of homeless people outside. I don't want to sound too humanitarian here,
Mm-hmm.
but you see that, and I feel like because of I know like well my girl, she works like within like all that stuff, so she knows that based off of like the movement of like where people are staying at and stuff like that, for it to be for people to know where to go to provide some type of relief. I would
Mm-hmm.
say that that helps out. um but other than that, man, it's kind of I ever since I read that article about they're people using the John Hopkins COVID-19 map to do
Yeah,
hacking.
yeah,
I've been
yeah,
kind of weary about sharing like information on like the people when it comes to the virus.
yeah.
Now, I still in my hearts don't get me wrong, people. I still feel like a good amount of this, maybe 75% of this, is hype. But for the most part, because I don't have the hard code evidence about it, like I just have to go with just acknowledging that it's true. But
Yeah, yeah.
I mean overall, man, I see that um, it's information that is can be helpful to in the right hands, and I think it's a good representation of it. But I too think about like what's being done behind the scenes, because Yeah, it's not. I don't really think it's a like what they're actually covering. Is it something that will really be? But how would I question? How would that really benefit like the crisis that we're in like completely right now? Like outside of what's
Yeah,
being highlighted in this, yeah, you're tracking folk, but okay, for what? What what is it that? Okay, uh, and to some degree, in my conspiracy theory bag, I feel like they're doing this because they're trying to track to see, who will be the next victim. You know what I mean? Not necessarily tracking where the movement of people based off of you know trying to understand traffic and stuff like that because the economy is down right now. Gas is at $1.64 where I'm at. So I mean, it's not you're doing all this tracking and stuff like that, but for what reason? Like, what okay,
right.
you tracking? I want to cross the street, or I'm standing over here, but I'm still in the vicinity. Like, what does that do for me? I'm kind of I think that's kind of empty there. So I mean, I
Yeah,
ain't.
they're doing it, and so you can get those random that it's kind of like pseudo information. Like, yeah, because really it is no purpose for them to give out why like a map of how people aren't going anywhere. Like that doesn't really give you anything in itself that's useful. Like, thanks, well, thanks for letting me know that people are staying home, like they've been telling us to for like the past
Right.
3 weeks. Like, yeah, people are staying home. Cool, thanks. But like it is. I think it's a side piece of information for what they were trying to do, which is they're trying to track the spread of the COVID thing, but at the same time, they can't really be guaranteed that any of that information is useful. So like they can't they because for one they got they trying to do it pseudo anonymously. So it's like they're trying to say like they're not tracking any one person in particular. When they show these maps and stuff, all you see is dots of people. All you see is like dots that represent people, but you don't really know who that person is, what that dot represents. And all they really getting to see is like, all right, people were here at one point and now people are here at another point, and trying to see if that matches up with their COVID maps that says viruses was here at one point and now the
Yeah.
virus is over here at another point.
When you
And
said that, it reminded me of the you seen Full Metal Jacket.
yeah, yeah,
Full
yeah, yeah.
Metal Jacket for, and he was in the helicopter, and he was like, I forgot what was the Vietnam. He's like, if they're running, then I mean they're bad guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
If
exactly.
they're not running, it's like you can't trust them or something like that. So he's like,
Yeah.
shoot everybody. Like that's what it sounds like. I hear it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that doesn't make any sense because we're not moving anywhere. Like the only place like I said, I come over here to record, but my place, but I'm not going anywhere. Like people are not going anywhere. So it's
Yeah.
almost like they set this up to see not really how it's spreading, but who's spreading it.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the how, but who.
It's very general data. It's like even after looking at it, they won't really be able to get too much on it, but getting like an overall map. It's because it's billions of people, so it's really hard to say like any one person that's doing this one thing is going to have that one result that they're looking for. But they can say that if a million people move over and do this one thing, then the potential of a virus spreading that a million people could have, could be affected, and you can see that on the map. But all of it right now is just more like experimentations with all the data that they collect. It's one of those things where um, they collect all this data that means nothing at the moment until they correlate it at the time. Like once they start putting their statistics and their algorithms in place, then the data starts to mean something. But right now, initially, it's just showing that they collecting a lot of data with no real benefit of what they're collecting. They're just getting all the data. They're getting all the locations. They're getting all these positionings. They're getting the timestamps. They're getting the device numbers and all that stuff.
All
But
right.
it don't mean anything yet until when they decide to come and throw an algorithm at it and say, well, this is what it all means.
Yeah.
And even when they do get that data, it's very general because it's by like the hundreds of thousands. It's by the millions of people. It's not by like that one person. So they'll never be able to point at and be like, this guy went this place at this time and he caused the virus to spread to this person.
Yeah.
That's not going to be, that can't happen for one, but that's not how it's going to be useful for them.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah. So you're right about that. Like as far as it immediately what they're doing, it's just more so what. Okay, so what I notice about Google is that because they are a knowledge gathering company, I guess is the best way you can put it. Right, data and knowledge
Mhm.
gathering company. It doesn't really matter. I guess what's going on. If they see an opportunity to collect data, they will.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
that's what they do.
That's what it is. It's like I don't even think it's for because like you're sitting there talking about this like going piece to piece. Like you're not going. If I had the coronavirus, and by the way, I don't. If I had the coronavirus,
I was
and
coughing, but nah,
right,
nah,
you know what I mean, it was dry. You know what I mean, I had to get me some water. But other than that, they would not be able to tell exactly if they're not accessing other parts of my information. They wouldn't be able to tell exactly
right,
if I moved over here and gave such and such the virus. So it's like
right,
it makes you question like what's happening here. Like, are they doing? And they say to track people's movement. Well, people are not moving anywhere. So what is
right.
this really for? It's more so just to dig into people's phones to see what they can find. Like, and I know that down the line it will come up just as much as we had that article we did before with Facebook saying that by the way it just surfaced that Facebook was secretly collecting data from Zoom.
Right, right,
Like that
exactly.
it's in that same vein of, oh yeah, we made a mistake and found out who did what with the data we collected from over 1 million people.
Yeah,
And then
and
that Google is an advertising company, pretty much, or digital advertising company. So the more data they have, the more they can stereotype and sell to certain folks and focus on different demographics that for them to, for their business to stay afloat.
yeah, yeah. Google's one of those companies where we know that they collect way more data than the average company, and I mean they're on par with collecting the same amount of data as Facebook, if not more. But they tend to be a company where they are held responsible for their data collection, and they tend to meet that responsibility in a lot of situations. Like with this case that's coming up that we just talked about with the kids having their biometrics collected. Um, that's a court case where they're collecting way too much information, and they'll more than likely meet that challenge where they'll actually put the proper things in place so that they can actually continue doing business. They'll probably continue collecting data on kids, and they'll probably put the money up and be like, you know what, now you'll hear it in a couple years that now collecting data on children has moved down from the age of 13 to the age of 7, and be like, well, I guess now they can just collect data on kids. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's more than likely in the realm of what Google tends to do. But like, at least they'll be accountable for it. Right now, Facebook is one of those in their position where they're getting found out for a lot of things, and then they're acting like they're not accountable for it.
Mm.
And that tends to be a fine line between how both of those two companies can get caught up in data collection things, but then one company doesn't necessarily get um, as penalized as the other. I mean, like Facebook really hasn't been penalized as much, but they're definitely on the way to being penalized. And Google has been penalized a couple times, and they've made their steps to become a better company about the way that they inform people about collecting data. Because they still collect it, but they a little bit better and they're on how they inform people that they are collecting it so that people don't get scared about it. And then, like I said earlier, they tend to be one of the better companies when it comes to saying, well, if we collect this data, we'll lock it down so that it can only be accessed by certain people in certain ways.
Right.
And that tends to come out in that way of like anonymized data. But at the same time, like what you were saying with in that other article where they didn't mention the kids' names, but they mentioned the father's name. And based on the father, you're able to essentially find out who the kids are because you can find out who the father is.
Yeah.
That's kind of the same way they do with like this anonymized data. Like they tend to um, they'll have this like anonymized data, and it don't have anybody's name or there anything associated with it, but they don't make it hard for you to like be able to backtrack and be able to determine who is this really. Like even though you're just a serial number, you can probably go through the like what do you call it, like the footsteps through the breadcrumbs. You can probably go through the breadcrumbs and backtrack your way to figure out who that person is, even though initially they was anonymized.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, it's one of those things where even though it's anonymized now, it's still your data is still potentially out there. And I mean, we do tend to sign up for this stuff. There is a terms of service that nobody ever reads that we just press OK on.
Yeah,
and like we get caught out there. But let's go up to this last article that we have. Another thing of Google and their information collection campaign. Google and the USCF collaborate on a machine learning tool to prevent harmful prescription errors. This is an article. This is a topic that I feel like it's going to become a larger thing as time goes on. Right now with this whole situation happening, the medical field is strong right now. I mean, they definitely are overworked and tasked right now, but nonetheless, yeah. I mean, they're tasked right now, but they definitely are showing their importance and how they are going to have to continue being funded well after this is over with, because I mean, it costs people lives not having health be taken into consideration. And Google's taking an initiative. I was trying to look for what UCSF is, and that's the University of California, San Francisco. Google has basically partnered up with them and created a study in research paper, essentially to explain that there is an issue with how drugs are being prescribed to people that have issues. They have some type of health concern that they're working with, and they're prescribed medications, and in a lot of cases, and essentially what they say in 2% of cases, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's the same thing with the coronavirus. Like 2%, coronavirus is only affecting 2% of the people, but they shut down everybody for that 2%.
Right.
Like it's 2% of the people that tend to get prescriptions, in a lot of cases, get the wrong prescription, and even more, like a lot of cases, those prescriptions tend to cause a worse problem or give them some type of new issue that they didn't have before.
If you have an internal bleeding or rapid brain loss or whatever all this other stuff they be coming up with when you take a pill.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, including with those too. Like, yeah, those crazy side effects that they have on there. But like sometimes you might get just the wrong prescription in general, or just pharmacists that are overworked and overstaffed and stuff like that. Or sometimes you might get prescribed something that worked in one scenario, but then at another hospital they tried something else and that worked better, and the hospital that you're at doesn't know about that other medication, so they find out late that it actually can have better benefits than this medication, and they're trying to be able to figure out a way to better sort overall medication usage, prescription usage, and the benefits, the pros and cons of these different medications that are out there. And I don't know how I feel about this, man. How do you feel, bro?
I think that with them, so it's too. There have been too many cases where people have had the wrong prescription, the wrong medication, and it resulted in death. And I don't know how if I can talk about this, but just know that there are things set in place for people who do not people who are not the government but issue certain drugs. When certain things happen, they are granted like immunity to the law because of what's set up. And the reason why that's heavily a disservice to the people, especially in times of crisis and stuff like this, is that we should be focused on preserving life as much as possible. Now, as far as I was actually, when I read this article, I was thinking about we have in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, John Hopkins, where you up there.
Yeah.
There's an undergrad, a graduate program called pharmacology, where
Mhm.
they study like how different drugs affect different races of people and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
it's like when it comes to prescriptions and everything, and like people's medicines, people who are giving these things out do have in-depth knowledge, and it should become second nature. But it seems like you still hear about these blips and blunders that's happening. But by them developing this, I guess for it to developing some type of tool um, to be able to prevent it, I don't. I think it's just always going to need. Hmm, you're going to need some type of human intervention. You got
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
got to
yeah.
you got to yeah, you can have that there, but then you can have this is what happened. And this is actually something that's great. So I have a whole lot of migraines, man.
Mhm.
Um, Probably like maybe once a week. Honestly, have one, and I usually resort to Excedrin extra strength. Well, this so
Yeah.
happens that I think for the past 3 to 4 weeks, I ran out of some for the past 3 to 4 weeks. I looked online, all of the Excedrin has been recalled. See
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
saying? All of them has been recalled, and it comes down to like, well, wait a minute, how is it that all the stores, but primarily like all the stores, have gotten all of this medicine recalled? I think it comes down to, them letting a machine like in a factory constantly run this thing rather than someone actually doing the proper checks and balances on it, and in turn, it was producing certain things that had like I think it said it had like an opiate mixture in it or something like that, which is
Yeah,
dangerous.
yeah.
So that's the thing I get with USCF, what they're trying to do with the machine learning. It's excellent in theory. As far as the practicality of it, it's not like having a machine stand in to lift the box so to put some. It's not like warehouse work per se. You're
Mhm.
talking about medicines. It's about, I guess, people helping people. I don't sound too humanitarian, but it's good to have a tool in place that helps it out. But I think this is one of the things where it's going to always need some human intervention, something where a flesh and blood person will say, okay, this is not it, or this is it, or be able to talk to a person and be able to filter out. Because a lot of times, even with the prescriptions, some people will come to the doctor and get something, and if the doctor's not really engaged, they'll be prescribed something that's not beneficial to them.
Right.
So
Right.
you need to have these things in order. I mean, it's as far as its usefulness. I know it says down here, it says the EHR, like how useful it is and stuff like that. But it gets kind of convoluted because I know we're in an age where this is technology, right? We're in an age where things are becoming more expansive by we applying different solutions via technology to things. We just can't get so caught up in trying to. There needs to be a checks and balances in place to know that the solution is being provided,
Yeah,
and not
yeah,
just not just something that's inventive, but if it's needed, because you can throw. It's almost like if you're trying to you're trying to cut like a piece of bread in half, and you're like using like a Genshu blade. That's not needed.
mhm,
You know what I mean? It's not needed. Like just get the proper tools, have that in place, and then do the right go about doing it the proper way, and the results you're looking for will be produced. People just have to get out of the idea of just trying to automate everything and just know what's being a little bit more hands on.
yeah. I think a lot of it had to do with like implementation too, because they'll build these technologies and um, the technology will is essentially it does the repetitive task. It makes whatever is the repetitive thing that gets done over and over again. They try to simplify that thing, but there's still a lot of stuff that is around it that still needs to be done in a proper way. And what happens to do with a lot of these technologies that they get sold on a dream of what it does versus what it actually does, and when they actually start applying these technologies in practice in the real world, um, they work with it based on the dream and not the reality of the technology. And they start getting the technology to potentially do more than what it was designed to do because they're trying to save a couple dollars on people or something like that. Where if they limit the technology to doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and then actually train the people around the tech to actually fill in the gaps of what it's not supposed to be doing, and actually making sure that they're doing the piece that they're supposed to really do as people, as workforce. Then the technology ultimately comes better. It's just like one of those things where similar to assembly lines when people kept thinking that machines are just going to come in and take over altogether, and it's like, well, the machines can't do certain things, and even if you bring a machine in, you got to have somebody watch the machine.
Yeah,
And
this machine just doesn't know discernment. Like these things that like the human and the human side of us is like the as far as like intuition and concern and all that sort of that it's something that can't be quantified. Right. So that's something, and because of that, it's something that can't necessarily be replaced. You're gonna always have that there. You probably would I think Elon Musk would agree with me with the whole like, not having machines run everything. He's heavy going heavy on the whole like not letting AI take over the world. But I think that's just another. It's a case of again just knowing that you need to have human intervention there because this is
can't be lazy intervention. That's the issue. That you can't be like, all right, we got this tech now. That means I can slack off. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You gotta still do what that tech isn't meant to be able to do, and like you still got to put in like the whole reason that a lot of this tech is being put in place because people do get complacent because we have a natural instinct that we complacent and just get used to things and think we're just going to do them the same old way, and there's no better way to do things. And then when you put in a technology, it's like it changes the whole dynamic because things can potentially get better, but then we get angry with the tech and be like, well, fuck it, that tech gonna do the whole thing.
Right.
I ain't gonna do none of this.
I was gonna say that.
Like, well, be like, well, what's wrong? All the shit got recalled. Well, what happened to your robot? I thought your robot got it. Be like, well, what about you? You were supposed to double check the robot.
Well, that's where it comes. I think. See, when you said something about the whole complacency thing, there is that what happens is when people get complacent and they get caught up in the tedium, that's when errors can actually happen because they kind of get used to, oh, you do this, this, and this. And then someone would say that's why we have the robot in place to prevent that. But then you got when it comes to the whole robotics part, you got to start off the right way. You can have all these things in place and then have the wrong formula in, and then now you mass produce, literally over 100,000 different products. Now, that's some laws for the so it's like I said, it requires not just one. I think multiple people with the robot to like kind of get this right. You need to have checks, balances, and everything. But
I mean, you got to work together. Like it has to be a symbiotic relationship. I've seen something on there. So I was watching some movie. The girl with all the gifts. It was a crazy like zombie movie about this kid that was a zombie, whatever. But when it was a symbiotic relationship where she pointed out the example of a bird that cleans alligator's teeth type thing, where it's like the bird gets to eat because gets to clean the teeth, gets all the crumbs out of the alligator's teeth, but then at the same time the alligator gets his teeth cleaned, and they have like like a symbiotic relationship. They get to work together. And it's the same thing with humans and robotics and AI in general. Like these things are implemented, and there's going to be all this back and forth about how it's done right and making sure that it actually is becoming beneficial and not just the new tech and people just trying to bring in the new tech that doesn't actually have any benefit toward us as an overall society. So I mean, we have to go through the rigmarole until we can find out these perfect relationships for all the industries that we're going into, and particularly in the medical field, because that's basically life and death. I know Amazon wanted to get into this industry. I know they're plotting on getting into this industry in whole because right now you can't. I think you can buy like herbal supplements and stuff like that from Amazon, but you can't get full on prescriptions from Amazon, like actual straight up medicine. That stuff is still
go ahead and buy an inhaler.
Yeah, like that stuff is behind, like because those are considered narcotics. So like those still have to be mandated with like regulation and police force and stuff like that. So they haven't done it yet, but they are probably in the same business of trying to figure the stuff out so that they can start distributing it along with all their other products that they sell throughout Amazon. So, I mean, something's going to happen with this industry. So, we'll see. Pros and cons. Pro, your life might be saved. Con, wrong medicine might kill you.
Right. A true 50-50.
But yeah, man, that's a good note to take off on. If y'all like this show, you know what you got to do. You got to like, subscribe, comment, and share. We are on all your streaming platforms, YouTube, Facebook, anything on iTunes, podcasting, Google Music podcasting, Spotify, and all your streaming resources for podcasts. Like I said, if you like the show, find us on one of these things and follow and subscribe to us on one of these things. We'll be accessible. Because
one of these things,
yeah, on one of these things, hop on, you see things, man, hop on us, holla at us, holla at us, baby. I mean, do what it do, make it do what it do.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're available to y'all, and we're here, and technically we can't go anywhere on a major scale right now, so. Get your fill, man. If you need a tech fix, if you want to hear about the latest tech news, come and holler at us because we got it for you.
We the plug, man. That's where it's at.
Yeah, man. That's what it is. I mean, holler at your boy. Got anything, Mike?
Nah, man. Everything you said, just ditto. Y'all know what to do, man. Follow us, holler at us, and we got you covered with this IT-ish.
Yeah,
this technology ish, like we up in this ish, all right?
Because we know y'all curse out there, so get your shit straight. Y'all take it easy out there. Be safe.
Take care. Peace.
Yeah!